Tennessee playing what amounts to a 4-4 fake. And there's a touchdown! Touchdown! My God, a touchdown! We threw it to Haynes. My God Almighty! Did you see what he did? We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose.
Welcome back to the DGD podcast. This is your host, Robert Reynolds. And boy, what a show do we have here. Waiting for our special guest for the episode to come on. But nonetheless, a lot to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. First things first. First things first. Definitely going to sit here and talk about the weekend in recruiting. I think that's the biggest thing right now in my head. A lot of IG fans, following that. So with that being said, it's going to be interesting to see, how that plays out, right? Because obviously this weekend being the last one. So we're going to talk some recruiting there. But let's talk about, I think, in my opinion, the biggest fish of them all, Travis Shaw. And let's start off by saying that Georgia made the best impression they could with him. And talking back previously, Jalen Walker being the catalyst, I think that's what you're seeing, and I think that plays a part. So if you're not familiar with Travis Shaw, the defensive tackle out of Grimsley up in Greensboro, North Carolina. So yeah, that's a big deal. Obviously with the decommitment from Bear Alexander, that's a big deal. And it's a must-have, in my opinion. It's truly a must-have in this class. Looking at the defensive line, it's very deep. It really is very deep. But the problem is there's not a lot of true nose tackles, right, or guys that's willing to play nose tackle. Travis Shaw fits that. Looking at Bear Alexander, it's nice to see Bear Alexander there. But he's obviously decommitted. So while you don't know if he's going to, come back and commit to Georgia, my prediction, I think he goes to A&M. But if, you sit there and look at that right there, in the context, Travis Shaw becomes that much more important to me. Obviously, and then you had the IMG guys, right? So you had, Dalen Everett, you had Kamari Wilson, Malachi Starks, and all those guys, Tyler Booker. All those guys come up, I think 6 of them in total. And, that's a huge deal because IMG is absolutely loaded with talent. So, I think a lot of good things came out of that as well. But real fast, before we move on any further, I'll talk about a little bit more recruiting here shortly. First, wanted to give a shout-out to my guys at What the Game's Been Missing. It's a new Facebook group and great memorabilia there. Got my friend Sean Starkey doing a live helmet series break. Seeing some Tom Brady's going there. You really should check it out, guys. Really should. It's great stuff. Just wanted to give them a shout out there. Also, while you're sitting here and listening or watching, make sure to like, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that follow, subscribe button. Obviously you can see here we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, there's much more. And obviously the website, dgdpodcast.com. Go check it out. Make sure you like, subscribe. Apple Podcasts, hey, 5-star reviews, guys. That helps out. It goes a long way without even having any kind of monetization there. But let's go back to the recruiting. You look at the situation in the program right now, I guess you could say. Obviously, you have the decommit from Smoke. You have the decommit from Bear Alexander. It kind of puts a sour taste in your mouth if you're a Georgia fan, and rightfully so. Those are 2 5-star commits. But there is some good news, I think, in the horizon here. Branson Robinson, obviously 4-star running back out of Mississippi, third-ranked running back in the nation, announced he's committing on the 22nd of July. And my prediction, I think he's a dog. You look at the logic, just within the top 5, right? You've got Alabama with the number 1 running back, Emmanuel Henderson, number 5 running back as well, and then Oklahoma with the number 2 and number 4 running back commits. And honestly, you look at that right there, and I think that's just the writings on the wall for him to come to Georgia, just off of those numbers. If you look at crystal balls, you could see Mississippi State being a factor there. I don't see that. I really don't. So I'm calling it. He's coming to Georgia. Now, obviously, that's not official, nothing like that. I'm not going to try to take away from the kid or anything. Just my prediction. I think he's coming to Georgia. And honestly, I want to kind of see how he fits into the system. I think he will fit in very nicely. I've heard a lot of people talk about comparing him to Chubb. Don't do that. Don't do that, in my opinion. I love the way he runs. He's short, but he's a different breed than that. He's shorter. He runs physical, very physical. Do yourself a favor, check out some of his tape on 24/7 or wherever you want to go to find it. But it's definitely worth a watch. He has some very good tape. You see why Georgia's on him so hard. Obviously, Jordan James already in the fold, so you're looking to add 2 running backs to the room, and rightfully so. You're losing Cook, you're losing Zeus, so those guys need to be replaced. Obviously, that's a positive light right on the situation here. There's a lot of other guys that looking into the situation. How could Georgia push away or pull away? Pull away with some of these guys, right? I think after this weekend, though, guys, Travis Shaw, I think it could be between UGA and UNC. Honestly, like I said, this is why I don't trust in the crystal balls. 24/7's got Clemson 100% lot or 100%. I just don't see it. The need for Georgia for a nose tackle, a true nose tackle, is going to be something I'm sure Kirby pushes forward, and rightfully so. So you have that right there. But obviously, he's taking a visit to Chapel Hill this weekend, so we're going to have to see how that plays out. But I think Georgia did pretty much their damnedest to get him in the fold and things like that. So, with that being said, you look at Jalen Walker, right? Obviously, I talked about this last week. Jalen Walker is going to be the catalyst in that recruitment. They're very good friends, and he's an avid recruiter for Georgia. And I think that's another thing that could help Georgia there. But also looking into this weekend, right? I wanted to kind of talk about this weekend here. Currently, Arch Manning is on campus. He's doing a 2-day visit. I think he's on the second day of the 2-day visit. So obviously all eyes are on Athens right now, especially with the Manning name being there in Athens. Kind of ironic, for the old heads. If you say you don't want a Manning on your team, you're crazy, because this kid has got it. Just saying. But nonetheless, he's on his second day. I'm thinking here, you look at Todd Monken, right? But do we really see Todd Monken being here when he's committing? So I think you have to look at maybe Buster Faulkner. I think Buster Faulkner is probably going to be our offensive coordinator after Todd Monken leaves. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But I do think Todd Monken shows them, tells them what he wants to see, things like that. And really, I think Georgia has a shot. I'm not going to say we're going to pick them up. It's not a guarantee by any means. But I do think Georgia has a shot. And that's all you can really hope for at this point. So, with that being said, last weekend before the dead period, obviously Walter Nolan is coming back today for a visit. So, that's a huge news, too. Trying to get him on campus for that last weekend before the dead period comes back. So, with that being said, you look at the importance of this last weekend. And honestly, for a non-dead period, right, for the first time in 16 months, things kind of didn't feel like as if it was going Georgia's way. We had more negative news almost than we did positive news, and that's something for Georgia fans kind of to take, scratch their heads a little bit maybe. I wasn't expecting it. I was kind of thinking we would have some good news, more good news, or whatever the case may be. But we really didn't get that. It was kind of quiet. I guess contributing it to obviously kids wanting to go take these visits. I don't think they wanted to commit immediately. Obviously I think it's a good thing that they don't commit immediately, considering the fact that, go take your visits. You know what I mean? I'm not going to tell you not to commit to Georgia by all means. That'd be ridiculous of me. But I understand why you don't see the commits like that. But Father's Day, I think Father's Day, you saw several people commit all across the NCAA, and I was sitting there scratching my head about that. You would think somebody would have committed to Georgia, but it didn't. So it's just a matter of time, I would hope, before we get some commitment news. Like I said, I think Branson becomes a Dawg on the 17th. So at least there's something to look forward to there. I'm definitely just curious to see how things go, moving forward. I think we're in good standing with Oscar Delp. You look at Travis Shaw, I think we're in good shape. You look at other names, other huge names, right? Kristen Miller, maybe. I don't know, just saying. Could be, not saying he will be, but I think Georgia's putting their right foot forward there in that regard. So, obviously the dead period comes back, I think July or June 28th or July 1st or something like that. So if that's the case, definitely want to kind of keep an eye out for that, because I think coaches can be on the phones and things like that, just not in person. But yeah, other than that, let's kind of rotate over to the Supreme Court ruling. That was some huge news and still is. Definitely wanted to kind of get a feel on the verdict here. Unanimous decision about that. Basically talking about, the NCAA needs to figure it out, paying players, whatnot. That's a huge loss for the NCAA itself. But nonetheless, sitting there wondering about it, right? Looking at it, and you hear revenue splits. You don't really believe, like, that's unforeseen territory in my opinion. I don't see how you do that without just deconstructing the entire NCAA system. It's just ridiculous to think that. I mean, and that's where I think lawmakers are sitting there. They don't understand the context, which, you would think they would. So that was something right there. Let's see here. Also, before we hop on there, guys, I wanted to talk about July 2nd, next Friday, college football for the kids. It is it's a live stream, kind of similar to what we're doing right now. It's going to be aired on the podcast platforms as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to sit there and bring on other guests, and we're going to talk college football. And from that, I think it's going to be a very good time. Let's see. Yep. So all donations, guys, will go to St. Jude, directly to St. Jude. I'll post a link up to donate and everything like that. And I hope everybody tunes in and has a good time with that. And while we're here, just hopping on, Harrison Reno. Harrison, how's it going?
Hey, Robert, how you doing, man? I'm so sorry about that. It's completely slipped my mind, man.
Not a problem, man. Not a problem. So we were. I just recapped the recruiting weekend. The recruiting weekend in Georgia, obviously with Travis Shaw and IMG kids, things like that. I was talking about how Georgia made a really good standpoint, really good spot with Travis Shaw. I think we may end up getting him in the long haul, and obviously the kids at IMG, Booker, Dalen Everett, things like that. I think Georgia made a good impression this week as well. What are your takeaways on this week from the recruiting weekend?
I think it was a fantastic weekend for Georgia, man. I mean, obviously, like you said, bringing in guys like Travis Shaw and Dalen Everett, I mean, two, as high-profile guys as you want in your class. I think they made certainly some good inroads with Shaw, but, I'm actually more worried about the offensive line and who they're taking this class than the defensive line, believe it or not. just because, there's looking like there's, it's not as quality. The quality's not there that there used to be when you look at these past few classes. So I'm worried about that. That's a lie.
To really look into how important he is, right? Obviously, both of these guys are from North Carolina. Jalen Walker coming from Salisbury, Travis Shaw obviously being Greensboro. How big of an impact do you think that is if he becomes a Dog? Do you think it's 100%? Could you rate it on a percentage scale of how important Jalen Walker is to Travis Shaw if he commits to Georgia?
I believe that Jalen Walker will be, instrumental in his recruitment and, this class and potentially anyone else's recruitment. Obviously, I believe Jalen has a brother that plays with him at Salisbury down in North Carolina. So I think Jalen's cultivated that relationship with Travis. Now, I can't speak on that because I don't know exactly what's going on between those two, but I feel like he will be instrumental in this staff's, process of trying to get Travis Shaw to commit to the G, which, like you said, I think there's a very good chance of that happening. I think he'll be, 50% involved on this. I think it's 50-50 split between Walker and what the staff's doing with Travis Shaw.
Absolutely. Looking at the situation here, though, I'm looking at it this way. I think, if you look at crystal balls, I don't know how you are with this. I'm not too big of a fan on them. I just find them interesting. They have him as Clemson as 100%, and I just don't see that. It was weird, but you don't see that. I think it's literally down to Georgia and North Carolina. Obviously, he's got to kind of to reiterate this. He's going up to visit Chapel Hill this weekend. If there's a possibility that he could not like what he sees up there or like Georgia more, maybe he pulls the trigger and commits to Georgia. If that's the case, I'm telling you right now, you hear a lot of this about, Georgia needs to stop the bleeding, right? You lose Smoke Bowie, you lose Bear Alexander, and then you start to see, or Michael Williams goes to USC. You look at USC, you look at Ohio State, they have a ton of recruiting momentum right now. How does Georgia, the question there for at least Georgia fans is, how do they stop the bleeding per se? And I think if you get Travis Shaw, if he doesn't have that great of a weekend or whatever, what if he commits or bring in Kamari Wilson, right, which is kind of quiet right now, but I think if you're a Georgia fan, you've got that name ready to go. You just feel like the writing's on the wall for him. It's just a matter of when. Obviously Branson Robinson to 22nd. What would it take for this feeling of stopping the bleeding, right? Would it be a big time commit? Would it be, good news, or would it be decommits from somewhere? What do you think would have what would have to happen to get this feeling out of these the Dog fans that are real pessimistic about it? What would you think would need to happen, I guess, to comfort these fans?
I feel like, obviously Travis Shaw, that commitment would be huge. That would swing the momentum from, let's say it's really low right now. And I wrote an article over at SI Dogs Daily talking about how, this recent decommitments and the slip in quote unquote momentum is nothing to worry about, because the fact, Kirby's averaging a 2.8, a class ranking of 2.8 since he came to Georgia. So, these decommitments, they're going to happen. We're going through a historic time where this is the first time in 16 months that kids are allowed on campus for official and unofficial visits. So I think getting commitment from Kamari Wilson, Branson Robinson, Travis Shaw, any commitment at this point, I think would make Georgia fans happy.
The funny thing is, oh boy, I don't have it on me, and I should have. I screwed up. While we're on this show, guys, 4-star athlete in the 2022 class, Ja'Cory Thomas, commits to Georgia. Harrison, I don't know if you're familiar with this, man. I can't do it right now, but I'm going to have to do it next show. I'm going to talk more about this. I have a commitment chain, and I don't have it on me right now. That's why I looked down. I was going to go grab it, and I don't have it with me. So next out in full effect. So like I said, just 2022 commit. Ja'Cory Thomas commits to Georgia while on show. So that's a big deal. Harrison, I think maybe we just kind of spoke it into existence. I don't know. I mean, that's a good feel there. To have a commit. I'm definitely gonna have to look into this kid some. Obviously, I don't want to sit here and try to talk about a kid that I don't know much about right now. And honestly, let's kind of maybe look into this right here. Obviously think this year, right? You start to hear a lot of these no-name kids, or kids that you're not familiar with. I should restate that. Kids that you think you would know, but that you don't. Like Ja'Cory Thomas came out of nowhere for us. That's going to be something I feel like this year that's going to be a big thing. Look at Carlton Madden, right? Nobody really heard much of him at all. Decommits from Colorado after he gets the Georgia offer, and basically everybody's immediately looking at Carlton Madden. What are your thoughts on this? Like, with the year, obviously, with things being so weird last year and just now opening back up, do you expect more of this kind of thing right here where kids will commit that you really not really paid attention to or you may not have heard?
I think it's, it's bound to happen. I think, even without COVID and the COVID year, I thought it happened, it happened pretty rarely, but there were some times where, the staff would find someone that they rate highly and on the media's part that they don't rate highly. I mean, good example, Carlton Madden. I mean, he's a 3-star in 247 Sports. But I bet you, after receiving an offer from Georgia, I can bet that 247 and rivals will probably bump up to 4 stars at some point before his recruiting process is all said and done. So, yeah, I think we'll see a lot of guys that kind of are under the radar right now and that not many people are talking about. AKA a guy like Drew Bobo, Mike Bobo's son, that went to Georgia's camp and had a really good week from what they said and earned him an offer. I think we're going to see a lot more guys like that rise up the chain and get these big offers that kids dream of these days.
Absolutely. You were talking about seeing bumps, right? When when we had the commit from the 2023 class, was it Marcus Washington?
Yes.
When he committed, it was interesting because we see that he commits, and then if you looked at 24/7, I remember doing it that night. There was nobody. It was nothing. NAs, things like that. Within a day or two, he becomes like the top 100 recruit, and I'm just like, what? So basically, guys, Harrison is hitting it right on the head, right? Like, you're going to see a lot of these guys with no rankings or very low rankings, and they're going to, I'm talking, shoot up the draft, like the recruiting rankings. They're going to absolutely skyrocket, right? It's because, and I think, and Harrison, correct me if I'm wrong, the fact that you didn't have camps, a lot of kids didn't even have games, and if they did, they were very restricted by who could come in and things like that. So you don't really have much on these kids. Now you get these camps opening up, kids going all over the place to camp, and you start to see these guys opening up and sending out offers, things like that. And now that the recruiting services are going to be able to go out and take a look at them in person, the rankings are literally worthless right now. Like, if you're one to follow the rankings and things like that, it's a waste of time. It really is a waste of time this year because things are going to be so wonky. And it's going to change all the time. All the time. There's no question about it. All the time it's going to happen. So keep that in mind, guys, that, that is a thing that you have to keep up with. Harrison, with that right there, though, maybe do you have any names that you think that could be prime examples for this outside of your Carlton Madden and, obviously Ja'Cory Thomas is a 4-star, but, do you see any lower ranked guys coming in that you think could just turn some heads and just immediately skyrocket up the board? Do you have any names in particular?
The only one that I've, maybe spoke to, whether, just a few friends around that like Georgia or just cover recruiting in general. I think, when Drew Bobo got his offer from Georgia, he was lauded for his technician type, his technical play as a lineman. I think he's maybe someone that could shoot up the boards. But other than him, I don't know, man. I mean, these kids come out of nowhere after these camps and get these offers from, Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, people like that, schools like that offering these kids, they come out of nowhere. I think Drew Bobo, if what these coaches saw in him at camp when he was in Athens, I think it was beginning of June, the first week of visits, I think he's someone that could potentially shoot up the board as a 3-star and maybe work his way up to that 4th star.
No, I see your point there. Obviously, the Bobo name hits a little bit different for Georgia fans, but there's a lot of kids out there, guys. There's too many to really sit there and name. And you probably won't even know about them, right? You won't even know about them. I feel like coaches will keep this stuff in their back pocket. They'll have that one, right? That one that you have no idea about, and they'll just commit. And from there, that's when it becomes real interesting, right? Because you have these kids that a lot of schools or anybody's never heard of, and then they're just really fucking good, really good. So expect a lot of this. And Brooks, I know Brooks Austin had mentioned a lot about this as well. It's going to be a chaotic year, probably the most chaotic year in recruiting history, and already it's showing. But Harrison, let's move on to the juiciest topic of the day. Obviously, considering last week, this was after this came out, NCAA, or actually the Supreme Court, spoke and basically was talking and set the unanimous decision down for the case for paying players, and they sided with the former players. And then I know Brooks had talked about in his NBR rant show, the revenue splits, right? And when I heard that really, I don't know if it didn't trigger me, but it definitely rung some bells. Obviously the NIL is what it is. And honestly, the revenue splits, I just don't see it. I don't know how they make that possible. Is that something that fans or anybody of the sport should really keep an eye out for, the revenue splits, or should we just focus on the NIL?
Honestly, with revenue splits and all that, because originally back when they talked about this 5-10 years ago, it was about having the schools take the money they make off, let's say, a guy like Zion Williamson at Duke, Duke, there's no question. The Duke and the NCAA made millions off that guy playing at Duke.
Absolutely. I love Zion. Yes.
And that's, the debate was, well, shouldn't he get some of that money? Because obviously, I'm betting their generic #1 Duke jerseys were selling really high that year because everyone wanted one.
I've got one, if that makes you feel better. So,
just proves the point. But, I think the NCAA is going to want to keep their revenue. Schools are going to want to keep their revenue. The conferences are going to want to keep their revenue. I really don't see revenue splits being proposed, because how are you going to do it? Because, obviously there's going to be some players that make a lot more money than others. Georgia's kicker is not going to make as much money as a guy like George Pickens or JT Daniels, even though Jack Podlesny, is getting into the fandom. There's I think thousands and thousands of Georgia fans that love Jack Podlesny. I'm one of them. Obviously, him hitting that, kick in the Peach Bowl was amazing. Yeah. But he's just not going to have the name value that a guy like JT Daniels does as the starting quarterback at one of the major programs in the world. So I just don't see revenue splits happening. I hope I'm wrong, but it's a money business.
And also thinking about it, I'm glad that I just run this show once a week right now, because it gave me a lot more time to really dig into what was said, what was said, and interpreting things, right? And one of the things that really settled unfavorably for me was, how do you deal with Title IX? That's one of the things that really, I don't know if the Supreme Court really understood that too much. And I think, to your point, the revenue splits, that would destroy what you call Title IX. If you're not familiar with that, it's basically equal pay or equal opportunity for women. So, for instance, if basically if you have like $1 million or $2 million for scholarships for a men's team, then you have to do the same thing for a women's team. And there's a lot more to it. It gets very complex and intricate. So with that being said, though, I'm with you there. I don't think that you see revenue splits, but the NIL guys, this is going to happen. And I'm kind of on the agreement here with Brooks Harrison. Kids been getting paid. The better teams at it didn't get caught. I mean, I just think that's probably definitely how it feels. But now you're coming into a world where, looking at college football, you're going to see this. You're seeing it's basically straight in your face, and that's just something as Georgia fans, or not even if anyone else is listening, just that's something that we've got to get familiarized with, and it's just something that we've got to deal with. But for instance, if Harrison, I'm probably with you on this right here. You may be with me on this. If you're telling me, I'm still going to go watch a Dogs game, regardless, right? Regardless what's going to happen, I'm going to still pull for my team. I'm going to root for them. If I'm able to watch them, I'm going to go watch them. That's not going to change. It's just, you're going to have this certain group of fans around the country that just despise, kids getting paid for some reason. And to me, I just find that kind of not really laughable, but it's kind of selfish. I had Alan George on a while back, starting cornerback from Vanderbilt, and he brought something up to my attention at the time that I didn't even think about. He was talking about it in regards to potentially, this was potentially at the time, kids getting paid, and he was like, why can a kid go out and do something or stream, because he's an avid streamer of Warzone, but he was talking about how if a regular college student can go out there and stream outside of classes and get paid for it and get monetized for it, why can't I? Or why can't an athlete do that for a service that they provide? And that right there really, really like opened my eyes, and I kind of switched. Like, I didn't really switch, but I kind of really leaned more towards paying athletes because it makes sense. I don't think colleges and universities, whatever, or other people should be banking off these kids' names, image, and likenesses. So I'm in agreement with that. What are your thoughts on that, though? Do you think kids should be paid? Obviously, I think it's becoming a thing where they're going to, but what are your thoughts on it?
I think kids should definitely be able to have the rights to their name, image, and likeness. I think that's without question. If me or you were going to go play a sport or something in college, I think we would want to get paid. That's the problem. I think we're seeing more and more kids leave college early because of the fact not only that there's so much money to be made in the NFL, and the average career is 2 years, maybe not even in the NFL. I think letting these kids make money off their name, image, and likeness, letting them go on Twitch and be Twitch streamers, or go on YouTube and make money off their YouTube channel, I think that's common sense. It's going to keep kids in school. I don't know how drastic the changes will be basketball-wise, because they can leave after their freshman year. They only have to play one season, but we could see a lot more kids graduate college and go to the NFL after playing 4 years of football. Obviously, for a position like running back, that takes a beating for most of the year, depending on what your offensive scheme is. They might leave early still, but I think they should be able to profit off their name. I think even if it's as simple as YouTube and Twitch, let's say a second string, lineman wants to go play on Twitch and YouTube, he can make his money that way instead of having to worry about businesses reaching out to him.
Yeah. And with the basketball, though, I know you talked about going 1 year. You're starting to see the trend in the elite athletes in college basketball going to the G League first.
Mm-hmm.
And that right there, and basketball is more advanced in regards to paying players, because kids don't even have to go to college at this point. If they really wanted to, they could go to the G League, get signed by a team, take a year, and then get drafted to an NBA team.
And make money.
Yeah, that exactly. So, it really questions me, or it really makes me question the competency of the NCAA. You basically let like lawmakers tell you what to do, but you can't even control yourself and make these decisions like you didn't see them coming for years, and you're just wanting to talk about it. I want to say they talked about if a state doesn't have an NIL in place or whatever, that they can kind of set up their own thing, and that just sounds like you're like running a wild west type feel, which, like I said, that kind of just reiterates the incompetency for me, in my opinion, to the NCAA. And then obviously, you look at the schools that are benefiting from this NIL. I look at teams like, I would think USC is the biggest one right now, in my opinion. USC, being in the LA market, I think you're going to see them come up quick. They're going to rebound fast, and they're really going to, it really makes you wonder how teams are going to combat that. Because like I said, USC, right, definitely can sit there and make your brand. Like brand is becoming a thing. It was before, but not nearly as much now. And next week, I have a feeling we're going to talk about this almost into nauseam, because it'll be July 1st, and a lot of places around the country, a lot of states are going to have those bills impacted, and they're going to be initiated. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. So I can't wait for next week, guys, because that's going to be a huge topic of discussion. But let's see here. Tanil says that was a great point, Harrison. And then she also mentions about the NCAA. It's amazing how fast they're regulating this. And that's the thing. Like, but how are they going to do it correctly? I think is where that comes off of that. That's my main concern. I just don't think that NCAA they're not competent enough to set this up the right way. I look back, Harrison, not even long ago, the 1 year free eligibility, like the super seniors, things like that. They didn't think it through. They really didn't think it through. It sounds really good from a PR standpoint. Hey, look, COVID screwed your year up. Guess what happens, guys? You can come back for one free year. They failed to realize the scholarship count and shit like that, and it just backfired in their face. Do you see anything good coming out of this from the NCAA in regards to paying players and regulating it?
Well, I don't know about regulating part, just because they've shown a tendency not, that they're incapable or not really living up to their own regulations of how to do it. Like you said, with the whole one free year, the NCAA wasn't really getting screwed in that. It was the universities that were getting screwed. I mean, Georgia has a guy like, Jermaine Johnson that wants to come back for 1 year. I don't know what the deal was with him. Maybe he just, was thinking of transferring anyway. But, what if you wanted to bring him back, but you also had, say a really 5-star, really good edge rusher coming in your class, and you just don't have room for him. Then you're telling, the 5th-year senior, hey, you need to go transfer to someone else. And I'm just using him as an example because he was a guy that came back, used that 1 year, and then, transferred. So, they really screwed over, programs this year. And then ultimately, they were trying to do something good for the kids. But in the end, they're kind of screwing over some of these kids.
I think you're also seeing it impact the high school level, too. Not as many kids are getting scholarships because, like you're looking at your teams like your Georgias and your Alabamas. Oh, I'm sorry about that. You look at the teams like your Georgias, your Bamas, Ohio States, so on and so on. Those top tier teams like that are not going to get impacted by this. They're going to still pick up your 5 stars. They'll pick up your high level 4 stars. But as you trickle down into the the lower Power 5 mid majors, right, Group of 5, that's where they're really going to take a hit, and because you're starting to see dependency on the transfer portal. Who was it? Oh my goodness, who lost a ton? Tennessee loses half their team, it feels like, to the transfer portal. So pretty much damn well they're gonna have to sit there and go to the portal a ton. But when you take up when you get a transfer portal kid, the logic being you get that experience, you get a kid with college experience, that also takes away as a high school scholarship, and it kind of works like you were saying too, where what about your lower level guy that came on as a full ride? These kids negotiate their contracts. That was an interesting note for me, is they negotiate their scholarships basically with their coaches, unless you're like a huge, like a starter kind of thing. But you kind of get processed, and you're going to see a lot more of that. And really, the odds of a kid going into the portal and coming out at a different school and actually succeeding are against the kids. There's so many kids in the portal right now that don't have a home, and it's mind-boggling to me. But what are the ramifications? I was listening to Terrence Edwards talk today. What happens if a kid gets scolded or gets coached too hard? Does he leave? Like, he up and leaves and goes to somewhere else? Like, how that kind of impacts the coaches as well, I would think. And it's just so weird to see that right there. There's a lot of things they didn't think about, right? They really didn't think it through, and we're really starting to see it, and it's only just beginning. I think over time, I would love for things to clear out and kind of settle things settle, but I just don't see it happening, honestly. I really don't.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think, one of the things that they should have done, and I don't know what others would feel about this, but this just comes right at the top of my head. If you're going to let these kids get one extra year of free eligibility, why not allow these schools to get extra scholarships? Why not extend that limit of, I think it's 85 scholarships? Why not extend it up to, say 90 or 95, just so we can, these schools can carry these kids that want to come back for more a year?
No, that's, and like I said, I would love to see that, right? I think you need to. And really, with how much money the NCAA and these schools are getting, I think they could push that. I really do. I think it would be beneficial for these kids to do that. More chances for kids to get on there and prove their worth and get scholarships, things like that. You can't go, the 85 sounds nice, but look at like what the NFL teams, they cut down to 53 from like 100 players or something like that. Like, that is insane. And
most
kind
of those cuts have no guaranteed money.
I know. That's the weird thing. But no, looking at right here though, like, looking at the NIL, Georgia, I feel like is doing a good job with branding these kids and having them ready for success. But you really start to wonder in the end, like how, I think you look at Alabama. Alabama will be able to weather this fairly easily, and I think it's because their product on the field and the championships don't lie. So, I want to hear your opinion on this. I think that certain schools, like your Georgia, I think Georgia's one of them. Your Georgia is going to be able to handle this NIL flux, where you're going to see, kids getting paid. I think Georgia's product on the field, especially this year, could be that swing year. But you tell me, I want to hear your thoughts on this. I think Georgia can weather the storm of this NIL. And paying kids, things like that. Because, like, let's be honest, you look at all, like, Texas and USC, they have bukus of money if they wanted to throw at kids. So, with kids getting paid that way, you're going to see kids go there, because of that. I think Georgia can weather it. Do you think they can or not, and why?
I think Georgia can handle it just because, obviously, I think, Athens is not out in the middle of nowhere. This is a university that is really well known. Obviously, there's a lot of alumni in Athens. There's a lot of alumni that come from that school and go on to be business people. Look at the football program. Alone, you got Rennie Curran out there doing business. You got Terrence Edwards being a coach now. You got Drew Butler, man, at Icon Source now. There's so many good alumni from the university that there should be a lot of money pumping into these athletes locally and nationally. I think Georgia's, well set for this. But compared to Texas or USC, heck, put in Harvard and Yale. The people coming out of those schools, millionaires and millionaires. I think Georgia's well off. I don't think we should worry about losing kids to a USC or a Texas just because Georgia's brand carries, maybe a little bit less or just as much name value as those other programs.
Yeah, not. Looking at that right there, though, right? You look at, like, Tanil, what she's saying here, Tanil Calvino saying that Georgia can weather anything. I'm kind of in that agreement, right? They're going to take a hit. Don't get me wrong. They're going to take a hit from this. You saw what happened with Michael Williams. But Georgia's going to be fine. And I think you look at the production track for kids in the NFL, and then post NFL. I wanted to mention, you look at Quincy Carter down in Texas, and his camps and things like that. You look at Noshawn Marino, he's doing well for himself. A bunch of guys. I'm gonna give a shout out to Under Further Review here, Under Further Review podcast with Chris Burnett and Brandon Boykin, two guys that UGA alums. Loved watching Brandon Boykin when he was in college, doing fairly well with themselves as well. So Georgia's got the ability to sit there and show you NFL success, aka your Matt Staffords, your Roquans, AJ Green, but you also have guys that even outside of a professional athletic career are doing extremely well with the education that they got while they were at Georgia, and I think that's why Georgia can weather this storm.
Yeah, and I think obviously let's look at a guy like Max Shinchcomb, who played. I want to say he played 5-8 years in the NFL before he retired due to injuries.
Yep.
Now he's working in health insurance with former Bulldog David Green. Those co-workers. Georgia will set you up for success on and off the field, and I think that's a big reason why Georgia's doing so well in recruiting these last few years. Is not only is Kirby developing good football players, but he's giving them a pathway to a career beyond the football field, which I think is the biggest thing on a lot of these kids' minds, because I think we're seeing it more and more that these kids are realizing that it's difficult to make it into the NFL. It's difficult to get drafted, but it's even harder to stay in the NFL after you get drafted. There's never a feeling of, I made it. You have to continue to work to, quote-unquote, make it. So, I think Georgia's, fairly set off to succeed with these NIL rules.
Yep, and you also shouts out Hines Ward. Obviously you kind of see guys going in and doing good things in coaching as well, with Hines going and accepting the wide receivers coach at Florida Atlantic. Obviously, that's a start for his for coaching career in that regard for collegiate level. So Georgia's got that all around spectrum of success. You look at money in the NFL, right? And Georgia's one of those top earning schools, in regards to that. But then you look outside and you do see guys that are very successful. So you got that all around blend, and I think that's what helps Georgia, like I said. But nonetheless, though, there's a lot to unpack here. But to wrap it up, Harrison, before we go, I wanted to let people know more about what you do. So let everybody know, listening and watching, where they can find you and how to get in touch with you if they wanted to.
All right, guys. Robert, first of all, you guys, this is a really good show. I listened to him last week with Brooks Austin. It was amazing. Robert does a tremendous job. I didn't actually meet Robert until maybe a few months ago through Twitter. The man's doing a tremendous job. Give him shout-outs. Post this link everywhere, man. I think Robert is a rising star in this business. Obviously, really good podcast. He's a damn good dog, guys. So shout out to Robert. Thank you for letting me come on today. But you can find me at @topdog_blogs on Twitter. I run a website covering Georgia football called topdogblogs.com. You can follow me over there, and you can find me on SI Dogs Daily covering the dogs, and you can find me on the podcast. Hopefully, we can get Robert on soon enough for a podcast visit. Obviously, Robert's doing a tremendous job, and Robert, I would love to have you on, man. Home and home, man. Hey,
I'm always down to sit there and talk about it by all means. I love talking dog football, and hey, I'll be more than glad to come on. You just tell me when. So also, guys, so if you can see it over here, I put the link for anybody watching in the caption there. That's his Twitter handle. So if you want to go onto Twitter and find Harrison, you can find him there. But Harrison, hey man, I just wanted to say thank you for coming on, and obviously giving everybody a lot to dissect, and obviously with the huge news, right? It was good to experience a live commitment. I think that's the first commitment I've experienced live on a podcast for me, so that's obviously fun to deal with. So if anybody's listening, watching, obviously you got to see some good firsts here. Harrison, thank you again for coming on, man, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
Hey man, I just want to thank you again, and sorry I was late. That's all me. Got a lot going on.
Hey, look, man, we're all busy, guys. It's no worries there, man.
Yes, sir. And hey, we got to run it back. But I'm going to hear real quick because I missed this part. What are you doing next week with St. Jude's? Obviously, I saw the announcement, but can you go into it a little bit more before we wrap it up?
Yeah, so if anybody, I talked about it earlier before Harrison came on. I'll reiterate this because this is next week's show. Obviously, it's going to be NCAA wide here. Obviously this is a Georgia podcast, but we're going to be talking with several other podcasters. I think you can look at a couple names here. Golden Blue Dude, he's a West Virginia fan that covers NCAA. Dr. SEC should be making an appearance. Huge names, maybe even J-Boy might be coming on. I think I have to make sure. But we're just going to get on here and do a huge group talk, for calls, right? We're going to obviously have a link up for donations to St. Jude while we do the show. There's certain rewards, right? If anyone does donate, there's specific rewards that are tied into the show as well. I'm not going to say exactly donation amounts, but like for instance, if you donated $10, right, you can have a guest say sing their fight song of their arch rival, or say their rally cry, like us saying "Go Gators" or whatever, or sing Rocky Top. You could see that. Obviously, it's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens. But like I said, all of that stuff is good for good cause, guys. I'm not going to see none of this. No one else is. It's going straight to the kids. And obviously we want to help them and do this for them. So that's more about the show, Harrison, next week. I don't know how long the show is going to be. I'm just going to go with it until we're done with it. But it's probably going to be one of the longer ones, but I think it'll be worth it in the end.
Most definitely, man. Just let it roll, man. I think that's what I learned. I used to, a few episodes back, I had a guest on talking South Carolina. And usually we're a 30-minute, 45-minute podcast. We got past that mark. I was like, conversation's going good. Might as well let it roll.
No, I mean, that's the fun thing about, you start to hear these things like that right there. When you have multiple people on, guys, like, conversations can go anywhere. And I think that's what makes it so genuine, and the genuine nature of it make it fun. So I agree with you there.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you letting me on, man. It was an honor, man. And it's really fun to be on here. Love to come back. Love to host you on, man, on the Top Dog Talk podcast, man. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely, man. I'm looking forward to it. I'll reach out with you later on, and we can talk about another schedule and some more stuff, man.
Yes, sir. Sounds good. Thank you, Robert.
All right, man. Have a good weekend.
You too.
All right, guys. That is all we've got for today's show. I just wanted to say I hope everybody has a great weekend. Obviously, the commitment news, right? Ja'Cory Thomas committing to Georgia live on the show. So next week, the chain's going to be out, and we're going to be doing it for the kids. So with that note, though, guys, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and stay tuned for the next episode. Go Dogs.